Well, hello, everyone. Dr. Rick Marks, another Dr. Rick Relate Well moment. It's really good to see you. I haven't been on for about a month and a half, and I apologize. Really good to see you. Been on the road traveling, had a short vacation with my bride, Luella. I did some work in Wisconsin, been doing a lot of marriage intensives with couples in high distress, not a divorce court, or high distress couples, stabilizing them through our 3-day marriage intensives. 87% of people who've done my marriage intensives over the years, since 2004, when they did those 3-day intensives, if they were in divorce court, they actually got out of divorce court and were still married a year later. That doesn't mean everything I do is 100%. If you hold me to that, I don't even hold myself to that. I'd be a fool if I did, right? However, it does work, and most what I teach, I changed my own life by, right? Transformed my own life by the very things that I teach. So if you're joining me today, right now, I've got my stream right here on Instagram, all right? But I got my main camera in front of me here. We're streaming live simultaneously on Facebook, 2 pages of Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. If you have a question, a comment, a statement, go ahead and write it in, and let's have a conversation. I'll be monitoring any comments or statements that are made. So the topic right now is, are some marriages, are they just over? Are some marriages just over? Now, let me give a sense of my background for those who have not listened to me before. I'm a psychologist, marriage therapist, all right? I'm also an ordained minister, all right? Been in the field of psychology, mental health for, since my early 20s. Working in the Navy as a chaplain's assistant, where we did pre- and post-deployment briefs. We did marriage retreats and retreats for singles. That then led me getting out the active duty, going in reserves. And I went on to get my psychology, a PhD in counseling psychology, as well as a master's marriage therapy. It was a licensed professional counselor in Texas, Virginia, both those states, for about 30 years, and legally counsel here in the state of Florida as a pastoral counselor, though I have many years, and have written articles. Curriculums Relate Well is our core curriculum. It teaches people how to have healthy, connected relationships. However, one of the things I have seen, particularly among conservatives and conservative evangelicals, is this idea that when a couple gets married, they are married till death do they part, regardless. And they'll use verses from the book of Matthew and Malachi where it says God hates divorce. And I'm not saying that God doesn't hate divorce. I believe he does. I hate divorce. I'm a product of a divorce home where there was parental alienation. All right. I experienced all that before they even had a name for parental alienation. That was a part of our life. My wife grew up in a divorce home where there was brokenness and craziness, addictions on both our families, abuse in both our family of origin. So I'm no stranger to brokenness. I'm no stranger to a home and craziness. I just decided when I got into my mid-20s and started having kids, I thought, you know what, I better shape up, or I'm going to pass on a generational sin curse of brokenness and destruction. And I didn't want to do that to myself or to Luella or my children. And so much of what I teach in our Relate Well program is what I learned the hard way, all right? It's about my own personal transformation. But along the way, you meet people who have this idea that marriage is at all costs, all right? That you have to stay married no matter what. And these church leaders, again, cite passage from the book of Matthew against divorce, God hates divorce from Malachi. And then we begin to apply that to every single situation. Here's the problem I'm having. I'll give you a story first, and then we're going to take a look at this. All right, this thing about is marriage at all costs? Is there biblical justifications for divorce? Well, the answer is Yes. Now, the two specific ones are abandonment and adultery. Where there's abandonment, adultery, the Bible gives it. It gives clear mandate that you have biblical support. And so everybody hoping their spouse abandons them or divorces them so that, or commits adultery so they can divorce and not feel guilty with God. Interesting, the religious leaders also, and they quoted from Old Testament sources and said, Moses, Jesus, permitted divorce. And Moses permitted divorce because God gave him the authority to allow him to permit divorce. They said, Moses permitted divorce. What do you say? That was the question. What do you say? And Jesus's answer was interesting. Jesus said to them, basically, North Georgia redneck vernacular, yep, he did. But this is what he said. But it was because of the hearts of your hearts. But it was because of the hardness of your hearts. Then he said, but in the beginning, meaning Genesis chapter 2, before the fall, it was never meant to be. So the original plan, the original design of marriage was two people coming together in a loving relationship that images the Trinity, and that love grows and matures, that friendship grows and matures, so that they would stay together till death do them part. That's the ideal. But guess what? There was a Genesis chapter 3. There was a fall. And the real trick is, how do you live out the ideal in a real world situation? And sometimes you can't. So Jesus is acknowledging, adultery and abandonment, but he also points out, but a hardened heart will kill it too. You see, in our world, we say it much simply. It takes two to make an us and one to kill it. You can fight for the us's in your marriage all you want, but if the other person doesn't, you're not going to have a marriage. You can stay legally married, but you're not going to have a marriage relationship. Example, not way too long ago, I was working with a minister, and 22, 23-year marriage. His wife is divorcing him, and he's all upset. And he's talking to me about it. And he actually said to me, well, she vowed on our wedding day to marry me till death do us part, and she's breaking that vow. And I looked at him and go, she never vowed to marry you till death do you part. And he looked at me and goes, what? I said, you heard me. She never vowed to marry you till death do you part. He goes, yes, she did. And I said, no, she didn't. And I guarantee it. He said, how would you guarantee it? Were you there? I said, I don't have to be there. I know she didn't. And then I said, as a matter of fact, you, sir, never made that vow. Because I did too. I said, no, sir, you did not. And he's looking at me like I'm some kind of, weird, arrogant guy. And I don't know about being arrogant, but I was going to get to a point. And I said to him, did you have traditional wedding vows? He said, sure. I said, then I know for a fact that you did. He goes, well, I did. And I said, well, if you're saying you did and you had traditional vows, I said, then you don't listen well, you don't read well. And now he's really thinking I'm about to lovingly hit him upside the head. I said, sir, if you had traditional vows, your vows that you said on your wedding day, you said you were going to love her in sickness and in health. You were going to love her for richer, for poorer. You were going to love her till death do you part. You didn't vow to marry. You vowed to love in the context of a relationship that is called marriage. And I said, sir, with all due respect, you broke the vow of love over 20 years ago. Your wife has been hanging on, hoping you would love her. But you've put the church, you put your selfishness, the way you've talked to her and the way for 20 years is the evidence that you don't love her, because love doesn't treat people that way. So the vow of love was broken a long, long time ago. And your wife knows the vow of love is broken. All she's doing is undoing a contract that you two have with the state of Florida. But the vow of love was broken a long time ago. You see, folks, somehow we have misconstrued what's most important is staying in marriage, even when there is no love. That is not biblical. I mean, thank you, Bunny. I think I'm gonna call you Bunny. I don't know how you pronounce it, that, but he got you. Thank you for that. Um, the reality is you could be married long term. I had family members. One of my grandparents married 63 years. No love. No love. If longevity is the goal of marriage, well, they did well. If love is the goal of marriage, we can have a different conversation, you see, because the goal isn't marriage, because you can have marriage without love. Now, the marriage relationship is the marriage relationship where love so grows and deepens and becomes intimate, it images the Trinity, all right? But let's be honest, folks. Some people earned their divorce. You see, it's like my mentor taught me a long time ago. I am either a source of pleasure or I am a source of pain. I can't be both, right? And if the bulk of what I do, how I treat my wife, her name's Luella, if the bulk of that, the way I treat Luella is unloving, unkind, insensitive, neglectful, I negate her, I invalidate her, I tear her down. If the bulk of your behaviors is that, number one, that's not loving anyways, then I am not a source of pleasure. I'm actually a source of pain. And if I am consistently this way, a source of pain, not a source of pleasure, then she could argue at some point that I don't love her. Why? Because love doesn't treat people in a way that devalues them. Love doesn't treat people in a way that demeans them. Love doesn't treat people in a way that invalidates them. Love doesn't treat people in a way that controls, manipulates, or disrespects them. Is my great teacher and mentor, Dr. Lori Gordon, said, everything you do, Rick, you're either a source of pleasure or a source of pain. You decide how you want to be. And if you are mostly a source of pleasure, Luella will feel love for you. It's just that's simple. And if you are not a source of pleasure, you're a source of pain. I treat her on a regular basis. The brain doesn't feel love for someone it feels threatened by. It feels that you are a threat. It feels danger from you. So the brain protects itself and people start to feel guarded. They start to feel unloved. They start to feel all kinds of negative emotions. You see, everything I do, I'm a source of pleasure, a source of pain. And if you treat someone on a regular basis where you're a pain, you should probably expect them to walk out of your life one day. I believe that most men today earn their divorce because of the way that they treated their wives. It's the whole mindset behind what is known as walkaway wife syndrome. If you want to learn more about that, go to divorcebusting.com, divorcebusting.com, the website by Michelle Weiner Davis, and look in her resource section and read the article on walkaway wife syndrome. Why are the wives, 70% of them, the ones who are filing for divorce? The research is clear. It's because of the way they are treated by their husbands over the years. They're done. They're not staying in loveless marriages. You see, the goal of a healthy marriage isn't the marriage, it's love. The Bible doesn't say the greatest disease is not divorcing. The Bible says the greatest disease is love. Now we're going to get into a rather stickier issue here. Many years ago, when I was on staff at a church, a large church in Jacksonville, a lady who is not a member of our church was told to come see me. I met with her, and this lady's name, we'll call her Julie. Julie had been separated from her violent husband for about a year. The pastors at her church were wise to tell her, get out, get safe, and separate. And then the pastors kept trying to get him. The guy he was an abuser. He hates women, abused the kids, abused the wife. And she and the church staff, the church leaders, were wise in getting her out. I meet her a year later into the separation where she is now going to file for divorce. She was still at this church. This is her home church. This is the church of her heart. This is a church that she's invested her heart in for many, many, many years. It's her home church family. Same time, though, husband I found out, had joined our church, which was a mega church, so you can hide there. In all this year separation, he wouldn't go to counseling. He wouldn't do anything. But he was still aggressive, still mean, et cetera, et cetera. And after a year of living this way, with him doing nothing that the church staff asked, their home church had asked, she finally realized, I have to stay safe and protect my kids and protect myself. She filed for divorce. And that is when the church leaders turned on her. Someone told her to come see me. And I listened for 2 hours, asked a lot of questions. And finally, I said, and in your mind, Julie, what's your only option? She said, I have to leave the marriage to protect my children and myself. And I went, you're right, you do. Because based on everything you've told me, it's all factual, you can't go back. That would be unwise to take your children and yourself into harm's way. Well, about a week later, I started getting phone calls from some of the elders of the church questioning me. Why would you support that? What about Matthew this? And what about that? I didn't have conversations with them about it because I'm not going to get into those conversations. Nobody wins because all they're trying to do is put me in my place to tell me I'm right and they're wrong. I mean, they're right and I'm wrong. Fine, I'm wrong. It got so bad that the pastor called me and wanted to meet with me one-on-one because they had come up with a plan to help put the marriage back together. So I was doing a singles retreat here in the city at a local hotel. And so I told him, I said, look, single retreat ends about 10 o'clock. Come to the lounge at that hotel. I'll meet with you there. It was on a Friday night. So I met with them. They were there, and he brought one of his staff people with him. And they laid out this plan. We're going to pay her rent. We're going to pay her, and we're going to push him into getting counseling, and we're going to save this marriage. And I was listened, and I thought it was a nice thought, nice gesture. And they wanted me to support it because she was using me as evidence that it's okay to leave. And actually, I didn't tell her to leave. I just supported her decision to leave based on all the facts. And they said, we need you to support this. And I said, I won't. And they said, well, why not? And I said, well, you have a little over a year now, 14 months by this time. You got over 14 months. You trying to make this guy go to counseling. Has he done it in a year and 14 months? Well, no. Has he done anything else? No. As a matter of fact, I understand he actually left your church and joined mine. And they said, yeah, but. I go, I said, gentlemen, hear me, folks, hear me. As this I said to him, I said, here's the thing that I can't reconcile in my mind or my heart. You all have turned the victim of domestic violence into an offender. How dare Julie leave her husband? And you turn the offender of domestic violence into a poor, we'll call him Sam. Oh, poor Sam, his wife's leaving him. I go, I can't reconcile that. I just can't put that together in my head. Why would you make her the offender? And why would you make him a victim? They couldn't even see it. They were so committed to this theology of divorce at all costs, they were willing to let her and the kids stay in violence because that was going to be the outcome. So much so to that theology. She had left the church, actually joined ours. The husband went back to that church. And folks, they actually held a church discipline meeting against her. And him, to be fair, but against her. Folks, she made the right decision to get out, stay safe, and protect her children. I cannot tell you the number of women I've talked to who were told by their pastors to say in sexual violence, domestic violence. Had a lady here locally, taught at a Christian school. Her husband practiced BDSM, hung her from ceilings, did all. And she relented Because when she went to her pastor about this bizarre, abusive sexual behavior, the pastor told her, you have to obey and submit to your husband's desires. And for 20 years, she lived this way until the clinical took over so much. Someone told her, come see me. She wasn't even a member of my church, to come see me. And she did. And I told her, as of today, it stopped. She goes, what? I go, well, it stops today. She goes, but what about me being submissive? I go, man, that's not submitting. That's abuse. You submit to loving leadership. You don't submit to craziness. I'm sorry, ma'am. And for the first time, someone in the church told her, you have a right to respect yourself. You have a right to be you. You have a right to say no. Turns out that pastor had been molesting children for decades, and that church covered up his sexual abuse. Folks, this is the craziness of divorce at all cost. Yes, God hates divorce. I hate it. I grew up in it. My wife grew up in it. We experienced parental alienation syndrome before it was ever a name. I was taught to hate my biological mother, and I did. I sung the praises of my dad, and I tore my mother down. Wanted nothing to do with that side of the family. That's called parental alienation today. But back in my day, no one was studying all that kind of stuff. It was dysfunctional. None of us 4 kids emotionally bonded to my stepmother. You couldn't. She had her own baggage from her first marriage, which is violent. You see, folks, this idea at divorce at all cost has actually led women and children to stay in abuse and violence and dysfunction. Can you see, folks, it's my personal contention. I'm not saying I'm right, but I do believe I am right. You get the difference. The idea here is that marriage is a relationship of love. You can have marriage without love. You see, there's what they're really saying is you have to stay committed regardless. Folks, there's 2 types of commitment in marriage. There's commitment by deep devotion, and there's commitment by constraints. Commitment by devotion, commitment by constraint. Now, commitment by devotion is like internal motivation. I feel love for Luella, and I have this love for her. I feel it. And because I feel love for her, I am committed to the marriage because of the feelings of love. And the feelings of love cause me to love her. Again, you're a source of pleasure, a source of pain. So I treat her with love, with respect, with goodwill. We call it humility, respect, empathy, goodwill. H-reg and relate well, okay? I treat her in loving ways. If you treat someone in loving ways, love deepens, friendship deepens. That's the best kind of love, best kind of marriage is where there's commitment by devotion. But there's another form of commitment, and that's commitment by constraint. In other words, constraints are things outside of you that keep you committed. In other words, I don't feel love for you, but I'm committed because of the kids. I don't really feel love for you, but I'm committed because I'm fat and gray now. Nobody else gonna want me. I'm committed to this marriage, but it's because God hates divorce, and I don't want to make God mad at me because I would be so ashamed, or my parents would be ashamed of me. You see, there's external motivations that keep you in the marriage. Now, let me say this about commitment by constraints real quick. Commitment by constraint is not bad in the short run. In other words, it keeps you in there. When a party, you just want to get out and run. But can we be intellectually honest about it? Being committed by constraint in the long run is not a healthy environment. You got to get the devotion back. But you get the devotion back when you both treat each other with goodwill and respect and empathy, which requires humility, you both start treating each other in a way that you're a source of pleasure. And you'll get the devotion back. I call that us. Us wins, you both win. Us loses, you both lose. And it takes two to make it and one to kill it. Did you get that? Two to make an us and one to kill it. And the way you know that us is in the house is you feel its presence and you feel its absence. If you treat each other in a loving way on a regular basis, you're going to feel the love. If you treat each other, or one person treats the other in a way that you're a source of pain, they don't feel love for you. They feel threatened by you. They feel that you're in danger. And so they feel apprehensive. They feel scared. They feel insecure around you. They feel guarded. Why wouldn't they? The brain doesn't want to be close to someone that it perceives is a threat. If you can mature yourselves, to becoming healthy, mature adults, so you can love well, and you love well because you know how to relate well to each other. So if you learn to relate well, you can love well. You live in that wonderful rhythm, I call it, that wonderful rhythm of us. Got it? My wife and I, at least I think so. She may feel different. I don't think she would say that. We have differences, but we don't let the differences destroy the us. We'd rather have us than win an argument and lose an argument. If I win, she loses, us loses in my mind. And we'd rather agree to disagree and keep us around. That's the better way to live life. So let's go back to our question. Are some marriages just over? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Are two to make an us, one to kill it. And if you have enough evidence over time that this person does not care about us, then they're saying by their very actions, their very behavior, I don't care about us. I only care about me. If you've been living that way a long time, some people earn their divorce. Why? You sent the message long enough. I don't care about us. I care about me. Marriage is giving it the I for the we. If you don't want to be a we, stay single, please. Save yourself from harming another person. Don't get married and be an I just to use somebody for your needs until you're done with them. There's no goodwill in that. It's disingenuous. All right. Are some marriages just over? The answer is yes. And for those in the evangelical world, my fellow ministers, there was a very prominent Southern Baptist minister I used to work for office. There was a deacon in the 90s was divorcing, and he came down and talked to me about them. And after we chatted, I didn't get some clarity, understanding about what was going on. He said to me, now this guy was one of the leaders in the conservative resurgent movement, all right, of the Southern Baptist Convention. He's kind of like a pope. He said to me, Dr. Marks, do you believe there's a point in time that a marriage is just over? Folks, I went into this field graduating from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary School of Counseling, PhD in counseling psychology, marriage therapy, master's in education, working in psych hospitals, some biblically, and I went into this practice in my mid to late 20s with an ideal that all marriages could be saved. And then you're faced with reality. No, they can't. Not all marriages can be saved. And so I thought to myself, when he asked me that question, do you believe there's a point in time that a marriage is just over, that it can't be saved? I thought, here goes my job. But I wanted to have integrity within myself. And I said, well, sir, let me say it this way. I said, I have never and will never tell someone to divorce. I will tell them to get out and stay safe around serious alcohol, drug abuse, and or violence, because I think separation is healthy, but the decision to divorce is really up to them. And he said, well, I respect that. He said, can you answer my question? I said, yes, sir, I can. I said, the answer is yes. I have come to realize that some marriages are just over. It doesn't matter what you do, how much you guilt them, how much Bible verses you throw at them. Some are just over, whether we like it or not. And he just looked at me and he said, well, I guess we wouldn't want that public knowledge. And I said, I don't talk about it. And he got up to leave, and I'm thinking, okay, am I going to have my job? I don't know. And he turned around and looked back at me and said, you know, Rick, I've come to realize you're not wrong. You're right. I've come to realize some marriages are just over. And of course I went, you know, and I said, yes, sir. And I said, two to make it, one to kill it. That's all it is. Does God hate divorce? Yes. Does God permit divorce? Yes, clearly. Will a hardened heart kill a marriage off? Obviously. Can all marriages be saved? No. No. However, I would say it this way. Before you move that way, just make sure you've done all that you can do on your part on behalf of us to save it. And if you've done all that you can do, and that person still does what they do, well, then their behavior tells you everything, doesn't it? They're basically saying, I don't care about us. I just care about me. And I'll close saying it this way. Don't treat someone on a regular basis in a way that creates conversations in their mind they never wanted to have. I don't want Luella to ever have the conversation in her mind. Should I stay with him? Does he love me? Does he care about me? Am I important? Is us important? The only way she would be thinking that is if I treat her in ways that would cause her to think that way. I want to treat Luella in ways that make her go, wow, he loves me. I'm good enough. He cherishes me. He values us. He's not perfect, not because she knows that for a fact. I want her to have thoughts that are about love and goodwill and us. And that will be predicated on whether I treat her in a way that I'm a source of pleasure. And I don't treat her on a regular basis in a way that I'm a source of pain. So now, are some marriages just over? The answer is yes. And you can throw all the Bible verses you want at it and force an ideal principle. As Jesus said, in the beginning, it was never meant to be. That's the ideal. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a real world. And the real trick of Scripture is how do you apply ideal principles in a real world situation? You know what I found? Sometimes it ain't going to work. Some marriages are just over because one person killed it, a hardened heart. Dr. Rick Marks, another Relate Well moment. And let me say this. If you want to save your marriage and you both care about it on any level, go to drrickmarks.com. Check out our 3-day marriage intensives. We'll show you how. The great thing is I can show you how to create the marriage that you want. Can we teach you how to communicate, how to emotionally regulate, how to treat each other with respect, empathy, and goodwill. We'll show you what to do to get unstuck, but you both have to want it on some level. And if you want it, drrickmarks.com, go there, read about our marriage intensives, give me a call. I'll help you get unstuck and create the marriage that you want. I raised my kids on the same principles when they were young. Have a blessed day, everybody. Bye-bye.